Welcome back to Limitless Mentality, where we discuss profound psychological truths to help you improve your life. Today, we're diving into something that most people never talk about, but almost everyone has experienced. If you've ever put on a smile when your world was falling apart, if you've ever felt like no one really gets you, if you've suffered in silence, this will hit hard. Because today, we're unpacking the silent battles so many of us fight, and the invisible scars that shape us more than anything else. All right, let's jump into it. Chapter 1. The most dangerous pain is the one you hide. Let's start here. The most dangerous wounds aren't the ones people see. They're the ones you never show. You've probably heard the phrase, check on your strong friends. But here's the deeper truth. Strength often becomes a mask. When you've always been the reliable one, the problem solver, the listener, no one stops to ask you if you're okay. Psychologically, this leads to what's called emotional suppression. It's when we push down our feelings to avoid being a burden or appearing weak. But suppression doesn't make pain disappear. It stores it like a ticking time bomb. Studies from the Journal of Psychosomatic Research show that chronic emotional suppression is directly linked to anxiety, depression, even physical illness. You're not weak for feeling overwhelmed. You're human, and bottling it up doesn't make you strong. It makes you suffer longer. Chapter 2. The hidden cost of being the rock. If you're the person everyone leans on, you know how heavy that responsibility gets. Maybe you grew up in a household where you had to mature fast. Maybe you learned early on that expressing pain got you nowhere. So now, you don't cry. You don't complain. You carry the weight quietly. But here's the truth. Even the strongest foundations crack under too much pressure. Psychologist Dr. Gabor Mate talks about the toxic productivity of emotional caretakers. You become so good at helping others that you forget how to help yourself. You give and give until there's nothing left. But still, you don't ask for anything in return. Because deep down, you believe your pain doesn't matter as much. Let me say this clearly. Your pain matters. You deserve support too. And asking for help doesn't diminish your strength. It reclaims it. Chapter 3. Loneliness in a crowded room. One of the hardest things about silent suffering is that you can be surrounded by people and still feel completely alone. You go to work, hang out with friends, crack jokes. On the outside, everything looks fine, but inside, it's hollow, like no one truly sees you. This is what psychologists call invisible emotional isolation. It's different from being physically alone, because even when you're around others, you still feel disconnected. This disconnect stems from feeling misunderstood, unheard, or judged for your inner world. The scariest part? You start to believe it's normal, that maybe everyone feels this way and just deals with it. But it's not normal. It's just common. And there's a huge difference between the two. Chapter 4. When silence becomes your identity. If you suffer in silence long enough, it starts to define you. You don't just feel pain. You become the person who lives with it. The person who doesn't need much. The one who never complains. But here's the psychological trap. Your brain adapts to protect you. It rewires itself to expect rejection, to avoid vulnerability, to numb hope. It's a defense mechanism, but it comes at a cost. Over time, this creates something called learned helplessness, a belief that no matter what you do, nothing will change. And that belief can keep you stuck in silence even when doors are open. You might stop reaching out, stop dreaming, stop believing you deserve more. But let me ask you this. What if that version of you, the quiet one, the invisible one, is just a survival mode you no longer need? Chapter 5. The healing begins when you're honest with yourself. This next part might be the hardest, because it requires brutal honesty. Healing doesn't start with others understanding you. It starts when you admit what you've been through. When you look in the mirror and say, "I'm not okay, and I'm tired of pretending I am." That's not weakness. That's the beginning of freedom. Neuroscience shows that when we name our emotions, just acknowledge them, we begin to regulate them. The brain's amygdala, responsible for fear and distress, calms down when we put feelings into words. It's like finally turning on the light in a dark room. You might not fix everything instantly, but now you can see. Chapter 6. You're not alone, even if it feels like it. Now you might be thinking, okay, but no one really understands what I've been through. And you're right. No one else has lived your exact story. But here's something powerful to remember. Pain is universal. Silence is not. There are people, quiet, kind, resilient people, who've walked through fire and are still carrying the ashes. People who've cried themselves to sleep and still showed up the next day. You're not the only one who suffered silently. And even if you feel alone, you're walking a path many others have quietly walked too. And if you're watching this video right now, that means you've already taken a step. You're seeking something more, and that matters. Chapter 7. Your voice is your weapon. Here's where the tide begins to turn. Your voice is not just an outlet. It's a weapon against the silence. Whether it's journaling your thoughts, having one real conversation, or just admitting the truth to yourself, every time you speak, you reclaim a piece of your power. We live in a world that often rewards performance over authenticity. But the people who change the game, they're the ones brave enough to be real. To say, I'm hurting, but I'm healing, and I'm not hiding anymore. Vulnerability isn't about being broken. It's about being brave enough to show your cracks, because that's where the light comes in. Chapter 8. The quiet ones are often the deepest souls. Let's end with this. If you've suffered in silence, if you've carried your pain without applause or attention, if you've spent nights crying quietly into your pillow, you're not broken. You're deep. There's a reason you feel things so strongly. There's a reason you've been able to carry so much. It's because you were never shallow, never hollow. You were always full of depth, empathy, understanding, and strength most people will never comprehend. And maybe, just maybe, your silent suffering has made you into the kind of person this world desperately needs. So don't give up on your voice. Don't give up on your healing. And most importantly, don't give up on you. So, did this video resonate with you? Have you ever suffered in silence and finally found a way to speak your truth? Drop a comment below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if you're still in that silent place, just know this is your sign. You don't have to stay there. You're seen, you're valued, and you're not alone anymore. If you found this video helpful, subscribe for more eye-opening insights. Until next time, keep striving, keep growing, and stay limitless.